Hello. Today I want to talk about graduates and critical thinking. According to a recent article in the Chronicle for Higher Education, an American survey found that adults and employers wanted colleges to produce graduates who could think critically and creatively and could communicate orally and in writing. These skills were regarded as more important than the more specific work-related skills which could often be learnt on the job. My take on this is that graduate employability, in Western democracies at least, is likely to be increased by including what we could call the 3 C's, that is, critical thinking, creativity, and communication skills, in all degree courses. That does not mean that students should not learn specific work-related skills, as well as the 3 C's, of course. We could also argue that in the modern world, many individuals will end up having a succession of jobs as the labor market changes over time, and that while specific job-related skills may become obsolescent, the 3 C's are always relevant to most jobs and will not become outdated through the graduate's career path. If the 3 C's are important for all graduates, what requirements does this place on higher education? I will deal here only with critical thinking. As to why critical thinking is important, I would say that if students learn to think critically, they become better able to analyze the various situations they find themselves in and think creatively about possible alternatives. As to what critical thinking is, I would say that critical thinking is thinking for yourself and subjecting all ideas, both your own and those of others, to critical analysis. Necessarily, that involves both trying to avoid simply agreeing with others because it's the easy thing to do, what's sometimes called groupthink, and also questioning received tradition. I would add that critical thinking needs to be linked to some sort of evidence, both for the shortcomings of existing frameworks of ideas and, ideally, for constructive alternatives. One of my models for critical thinking here is the work of early modern scientists like Copernicus, Vesalius, Kepler, Galileo, and Newton, all of whom thought for themselves and questioned tradition, or at least certain aspects of it, but also who presented substantial evidence for their ideas. Critical thinking is not confined to the sciences, of course. Rather, it is vital for all areas of life in which decisions have to be made and the relative merits of various courses of action considered. Critical thinking is also more likely to be effective if it is itself open to critique. People who think for themselves need to be self-critical and to be open to the criticism of others. Open debate enhances effective criticality. Social contexts are also relevant, of course, and we should note that organizations vary in their nature. My view is that productive organizations are those which encourage, or at least permit, critical discussion and debate, and unproductive organizations are those which stifle it. When open debate is allowed, participants are empowered, and new and creative ideas may emerge. When open debate is stifled, employees may feel unable to speak, and there is no one to question the ideas of those in control. This leads to what may be a fatal inflexibility. I came across 2 recent educational examples. I'll give a link to where you could find them in a comment below the video. In one, a recent article in the Times Higher Ed, there is a discussion of the dysfunctional consequences of authoritarian educational systems in the Arab world. Some of the main points were as follows. First, according to Khalid Fahmy, professor of history at the American University in Cairo, who was speaking at the European Association for International Education's annual conference in Istanbul in 2013, students in many Arab countries were failing to get a proper university education because they still felt unable to challenge their tutors. For Fahmy, the culture of deference to lecturers was more damaging to student development than overcrowded classrooms or the general lack of university resources. Moreover, Students were keen not to embarrass their instructors by asking them hard questions or probing the limits of their knowledge, so made huge efforts to dumb themselves down. In passing, let me note that Fahmy traced this culture of undue deference towards academics, not to Arab traditional culture, but back to the hierarchy between teachers and students found in the French Academy, which was the model for most Egyptian universities. Fahmy also believed that the current status quo was untenable, and that vibrant democracies could not be established unless liberal arts began to flourish within universities. He noted that there was actually no term in Arabic for liberal arts. Moreover, universities in the Arab world were too focused on providing degrees in science, engineering, and medicine, the result that it was very difficult for critical thinking to take place on campus. Without new ideas arising from the humanities subjects, more vocational skills could not be effectively applied to real-world problems. In engineering, for example, our expertise is how to pour concrete, but there's no knowledge of urban planning or how to organize public space. Again, it was a common critique of the recently ousted Muslim Brotherhood government in Egypt that there wasn't a single poet, artist, or writer in the movement's leadership. 85% of them held qualifications in engineering or medicine. Another speaker at the same conference, Michael Willis, King Mohammed VI Fellow in Moroccan and Mediterranean Studies at St. Anthony's College in Oxford, noted that what depressed him most about living and teaching in Morocco was the sense of fatalism in young people. They felt the future could not be changed, he said, and everything was fixed and tied down by self-appointed elites. He added hopefully that there was now a sense that things could be changed. I was also interested in a recent article in The Economist about Chinese high schools. Traditionally, Chinese students rarely questioned teachers, again part of a broader deference to authority in Chinese society. Yet Western-style debating was now becoming more common in some schools, in which participants sometimes even argued against prevailing Communist Party policies. According to The Economist, many schools, especially in the big cities, now had teams that debated both in English and Chinese. Educators said that the aim was to develop some of the skills they knew were lacking: critical thinking, spontaneity, and public speaking. Many students also believed that taking part in debating was an extracurricular activity that could help them with applications to universities in the West. The article also noted that Chinese universities had debating teams, but that there were more political sensitivities at higher levels of education, so the debates tended to be less wide-ranging. Specifically, some motions might be deemed too political and therefore be rejected. There were certain red lines that could not be crossed, but this seemed a very significant point. Participants found even this limited freedom empowering. Thank you for listening.